Hasan Piker's here.
People don't hum anymore.
Okay, I want to talk to him. Thank you for doing this, Billy. I appreciate it. He's one of the most influential political commentators out there. It really is hard to find anyone that breaks things down, complicated things down better. He streams every day, as I told you, for 8 hours, and the news every day seems to provide for you even more than 8 hours of information. There are a number of things I wanted to talk to you, but thank you for joining us, Hasan. I appreciate your patience there. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you for having me. I hope you guys can hear me well. I am currently at a basketball. I'm currently at a park. This is usually my basketball hour, and it's the one time of the day that I have a little bit of time to myself, where I take my dog out and I actually play, run some drills that I found on TikTok, so that I can stay competitive with these young guys out here. As a 33-year-old man, so I apologize for the backdrop if it's a little weird.
Hasan,
and unorthodox.
Hasan, did you ever get those shoes that were designed to help you jump higher?
Ooh, the E-Space shoes.
Yeah, the ones that had like little platforms at the bottom. Did you ever get those for your basketball training or no?
No, I never did. But I was talking to a content creator. I was on the Creator League at RDC, put together a Creator League at DreamCon in Austin a couple weeks back. And I was talking to one of the basketball content creators out there by the name of YPK Ray, and he was telling me about how he has like this insole now. The kids, they have this insole they put on their shoes that makes them jump. But no, I got my dusty Kyrie Irvings here. I got a bunch of them. When they canceled the shoes, I went and bought a bunch of them on clearance because when I wear, I'm a big boy, so if a shoe works for me, it's like, I wore Hyper Dunks for like 10 years after they were discontinued. And, it happened to be that his shoes, they fit really well for me. So I went and bought a bunch of them off clearance.
Any parallels between you trying to keep up with the young men in a young men's game and you in the content game trying to keep up with everybody during a crazy political time?
Not necessarily. I'm a bit of a dynamo. I'm honestly pretty solid when it comes to my endurance and on the court as well. For a 33-year-old guy, I work out quite frequently. But as far as like the content sphere goes, I mean, I'm a one-man operation. So no, I don't see Jake Tapper doing 8-hour streams every day. That's who I'm competing with. Or when it comes down to it, like if I look at the content space, it's like I'm never going to be able to do the stuff that like Kai Cenat's doing. He's in an entirely different playing field. He's a very entertaining guy. I love him. He's great. But my lane is politics. I try to merge the two. I try to merge the entertainment and the politics stuff together, and I hope I do a decent job at it. But overall, there aren't that many hours in the day for me to be able to do even more than I'm doing currently.
We are getting you on here before you are starting your workday, so I don't know if anyone's heard what your thoughts are on Kamala Harris naming Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her VP candidate. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, I love it. I'm very excited about Walz. Walz he's a fighter. He's done a lot with a very slim majority in the state legislature in Minnesota. And I've been writing for the Democratic Party of Minnesota for quite some time. So I'm actually very excited about Walz. I definitely think he was a better choice than Shapiro. A lot of people immediately think, oh, is it because of Israel or whatever? No, like Walz is also, going to be pro-Israel. Most Democrats are. In general, that's American foreign policy. My frustration with Josh Shapiro was actually because he was pro-school vouchers. Like he worked with the Republicans in the state when he became the governor to push for a school voucher program, and I think that's very right wing for me. I don't really like that. I think that's immediately it spells that you're anti-teachers union, and that's a pretty solid, pretty important constituency for the Democratic Party. Tim Walz, on the other hand, is a teacher. So I'm very excited to hear how he will communicate a more progressive agenda for the Democratic Party. I think they actually have listened to the voters. They've been doing a lot of good things this past month, especially. They've almost become this competent party that I never really experienced. I never really thought they could be. It's been shocking. And the Republicans are kind of flailing around because they also don't know how to deal with a competent party. I think they've gotten too used to, running against someone like Joe Biden. I think they got too used to running against unpopular candidates and unpopular policies in general. So we'll see what happens.
Hasan, you mentioned popularity, and I've noticed that recently, at least in terms of eyes and attention and maybe word on the street, you're a bit of an outlier in that you're more progressive, but you're sharing those progressive views on platforms like Twitch and other various accounts of social media. I've noticed there's a bit of a sea change from just 4 years ago in the last election cycle. It almost seems like there's a conservative, concerted effort to appeal to IG lifestyle pages. And we saw Trump on a highly popular Twitch stream yesterday. What do you make of this very clear strategy from the GOP?
Yeah, I think they kind of lucked into that. I mean, obviously Donald Trump is always going to be doing stuff like that, regardless. That's unique to Donald Trump. JD Vance tries to do it with the Nelk Boys. It's not going to be the same, obviously. But in terms of the Republican Party kind of leaning into this lifestyle stuff, you're absolutely on the money on this. I think the manosphere grew quite a lot organically online, and this kind of pendulum swing occurs regardless. You know, you got a Democratic president in charge. All of a sudden, people are going to go back to the regular old culture war issues. It's something I called immediately. As soon as Joe Biden became president, I was like, we're going back to the culture war stuff. It's going to turn into like Gamergate era politics. Everyone is going to be talking about trans people this, trans people that. You know, things that actually don't touch on the pocketbooks of any Americans. It's not exactly a kitchen table issue. We are very dominated by right-wing culture war narratives in this country. And I think it stems from the inability of the Democratic Party in actually addressing some of the economic problems that American families are facing, and their lack of interest in actually doing something bold and brave in terms of like declaring a bold and brave progressive agenda, an economic agenda. There are some good things that the Democratic Party did, even under Joe Biden, despite the fact that I'm very critical of Joe. And I think they should continue along with that so that we can move away from these like, I can't believe I'm going to use the term that the Democratic Party is now using, but these weirdos who are constantly focusing on like really marginal, really silly, really inconsequential things, making it like the primary concern of every single person. There's like this sweatiness to it. There's this nervousness to it. This anxiety to it. It's like frequently imagining that there's like probably a trans person behind every corner. Like, it's like, I don't get it, man. Just like let people live. I care about expanding child tax credits. I care about eviscerating child poverty. I care about healthcare. I don't know, like these things are going to help you too. Like I'm pretty sure most Americans would agree at the end of the day, if the Democratic Party actually ran on that, instead of constantly picking up a, dare I say, cowardly posture and trying to always run defense after the Republicans end up dominating the political conversation in every issue, whether it be the crime hysteria, whether it be the immigrant crime hysteria and the panic that they cultivated. Instead of capitulating to the right-wing framing, if they actually ran on very progressive policies and said, like, do you want healthcare or not? Like, what are we talking about here? I think more Americans will be on board.
It seems unusual, given the depth of the things that plague America, that what is working now is the very accurate "you're weird," running on a platform of "they're weird" over there.
Yeah, but it's true though, because it's true. It's honestly, like, I think it's much better than just talking about how like scary they are, how authoritarian the Republicans are. Because like, do they present a genuine threat to American democracy? Potentially. I think so, definitely. But that actually gives the Republican Party like a sense of a sense of power, I think. And this actually deflects. This actually neutralizes that power and just says, no, dude, you're weird. Like you're odd for hyper focusing on this sort of stuff. And I think that is that's something I've been doing for years. I call it hogwatch. I'm fascinated with Republicans in general. I love my countrymen. I love watching them in the wild. You know, I love watching the way they operate. I've been doing this for years and years and years, and I've noticed that, like, They've gotten increasingly more nutty on the timeline, especially with like social media becoming more right wing, with like Elon Musk purchasing Twitter. I heard you say you will never call it X. I agree. I will never call it X either. Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, making it more right wing, like making it overtly more right wing, and putting so much like violence on the timeline too, above all else. I think that this has created this false sense that Republican policies are actually more popular than they are. They're not. Like, most people don't care. Most people have never met a trans person. They don't think about trans people all that much. They probably might think like, oh, it's a little weird. Like, I don't really understand this trans stuff. I thought it was only two genders. Whatever. I'm moving on. I care about being able to pay for my groceries. But there's a lot of people on the Republican Party, especially in the commentary sphere, that have just broken their minds on this issue, where that's all they care about. They're like, I don't care about anything. I want to make sure that we're melting like this 0.1% of the population. I want to do harm to this 0.1% of the population. It's like, dude, that's odd. Like, why do you care? You care more about trans stuff than trans people do. I have trans friends. I have plenty of trans members in my community. They don't think about the latest and greatest in trans technology or trans culture in the same way that like a Ben Shapiro type does. It's like, it's so strange. Like, let people live. Let people breathe.
It's an easy winning position for your base if you're always perpetually focused on demonizing others so that you could protect white power. So that anyone who's different from the norm can't get to equality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is a very children yelling in the park. I think it is a very you're right. I mean, it's an old narrative. It's a cliche. They do it all the time. They used to do it for gay people in the 90s. And then, that became legal and normal with gay marriage. Then they had to move on to something else. They had to move on to trans people. And now the narrative is exactly still the same. Like, for trans people, they say the exact same stuff that they used to say about gay people in the 90s. But ultimately, I think you have to set up a counter to that. You know that this is going to be a talking point. And if you're the Democratic Party, you got to give the right something to sink their teeth into, right? You can't be constantly in a defensive posture against the right. You actually have to go forward with a bold agenda so they can call you a socialist. And then you have to talk about why that bold agenda is not necessarily bad. And it's actually good for Americans, right? Like, free lunch and free breakfast at schools, a Tim Walz policy, right? He passed it. He passed it in Minnesota. It was phenomenally popular. You think Republicans don't want their children to get free school lunch? Of course they do. Of course they like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's entirely too costly to take care of children in this country. Many people can't even think about that idea because they just don't have enough money. We have two-income households that still can't take care of children and have children. Child care is entirely too costly. One aspect of that is free school lunches. That's a good policy. Let the Republicans yell about how that's actually socialism and how that's bad. If you put forward a bold progressive agenda, if you actually get some done on the progressive side, sorry for cursing. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that on the show.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
In front of the kids, though, geez.
Yeah, they can't hear me. It's all good. But if you get stuff done, Republicans are going to inevitably try to position themselves against that stuff. And these things are very popular ideas that are helpful for all Americans, right? So that's part of the reason why I think it's, I fault the Democratic Party a little bit for where we've gotten to in terms of the discourse here. But it's not like Republicans just started yelling about trans people. It's not like Republicans just started saying that like immigrants are doing crime and they're rapists and they're drug dealers or whatever. They've been saying that because they know that they have to actively campaign every day for 4 years and not every 4 years. Whereas Democrats, on the other hand, only campaign every 4 years when they remember they have to, run for office. And then they're like, whoa, this stuff, this immigration stuff, maybe it's gotten a little too out of hand. Maybe the Republicans are right, which is the dumbest thing you can do. I've said this before. It's like you got abortion, you have democracy. Those are like two major things. Now, with Kamala Harris, obviously being the candidate and not Joe Biden. You also have age, you have instability, you have all these things. You can also talk about how progressive Kamala Harris is in comparison to Donald Trump. These are all in the pocket for you. This is your strong suit, right? Play to your strengths. Never talk about immigration. Never bring that up. Joe Biden should have never done the right-wing immigration bill. They should have never capitulated to right-wing framing on immigration. Democrats historically have always done things like this. They always tack to the right, but they always end up losing. They always end up losing because that's their strong suit. That's what they're good at. That's what the Republicans are good at. I don't know why you would, like, if you're LeBron, you don't have to play chess. You could do the dunk competition against like a grandmaster. You know what I mean? I don't understand why Democrats are like, I'm LeBron, one of the greatest athletes of all time, and no, I'm actually going to play chess instead of the dunk competition against a grandmaster like Hikaru or Magnus Carlsen or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
Can you explain this part to me, though? Because Kamala touted that right-wing immigration bill in Atlanta last week, too. Like, why is it that that seems to be the point that both parties can agree on? I mean, the stuff with the deportation, it's a bit crazy.
A bit crazy. I mean, it's very crazy. And Donald Trump is talking about Eisenhower. He's talking about a word I can't say because it's a slur in the aftermath of the Sarah program, where we deported 1.3 million Mexicans from this country, including Mexican Americans, as a matter of fact. Not just people from, not people whose nation of origin is Mexico. We did that. We did that during World War I. We did that in the aftermath of World War II. And Donald Trump's touting that as a popular policy. And it's got like 60% approval right now. And a big part of the reason is because there's no counter messaging against that from the Democratic front. They have completely been captured by the right-wing framing on the matter. And obviously it's very racist, very fascist. I mean, it's just like straight Nazi Germany stuff. No one is thinking about like what 20 million, let's say there's 20 million migrants in this country that are undocumented. How exactly are you going to do the mass deportation? You're going to start going into brown neighborhoods with BORTAC, with the American Gestapo, special weapons and tactics for the Customs and Border Patrol, in what the ACLU calls constitution-free zones, and you're going to start doing door-knocking operations and cast a dragnet over brown communities, and then put them in CCOT style, like in El Salvador, like mass detention centers, mass deportation facilities. You're going to put them in front of one judge, 200 at a time, because there's 20 million people. That's a lot of people, right? You have to make this process as expedient as possible. So now you're putting 200 people at a time in front of a judge that is declaring them to be illegal. Then you have to put them in concentration camps. I mean, that's just straight Nazi Germany stuff. And I don't think anybody's talking about it on those terms, which I find to be abhorrent. I find it to be morally repugnant.
But to have agreement with like neither one of the parties is being reasonable here. It's just everyone's getting dragged over to a place that, like, I mean, what is that? How is it that we've arrived there? Like that is not anyone's idea of America in principle.
I know. And Americans are actually not of one mind on this. Immigration historically is one issue where Americans are like consistently both very sympathetic to migrants on and also very Hitlerian in the same breath. Like these are, if you look at focus groups on immigration, you'll be shocked. Like a person will unironically say, I want mass deportations of all migrants living on U.S. soil. And in the next breath, we'll say something along the lines of, yeah, we should do amnesty actually for everyone that's been here. And it's like, how can you have these two opinions? That's because the Democratic Party is too scared. They refuse to actually have any sort of counter messaging on this front. And they just capitulate the right-wing framing every single time. They did this with the crime panic too. It's completely born out of hysteria. It's straight Hitlerian on the Republican side. And what's happening in America right now is not dissimilar to the rise of Hitler and Nazi Germany, in the sense that like liberals also capitulated to in an effort not to adequately put up a strong fight and align with the communists and align with the trade unionists, align with the socialists against the rise of Nazis and the rise of fascism in Germany. They said, no, this guy is working within the confines of German politics. It's fine. And we all know what happened afterwards. It's called the ratchet effect. The Democrats regularly play the role of almost controlled opposition on a lot of issues, this one being one of them. It's the same with the bipartisan consensus on American foreign policy. This is basically, which I would consider to be fascist in general, but no one really cares about that. And this is fascism inward, like bringing fascism back domestically, having concentration camps for people that don't look like you, that people whose immigration status could be quickly and expediently dealt with and turned into documented U.S. citizens who are already participating in the American economy in incredibly meaningful ways. People who statistically are less likely to do crimes than natural-born U.S. citizens. A fact that Democrats should be saying every single day of the week. They should be putting that front and center. It's just completely made up. This hysteria about migrant crime is completely made up. Crime is down. Crime is down in America across the board. Okay. Crime is down. It readjusted back to like the lowest levels that it was at pre-pandemic, right? And it's only going down further and further. So the idea that like we have, tens of millions of migrants crossing the border and they're doing crimes is so silly. It's like, okay, migrant detentions are up, crime is down. So what's going on? Is it that they're just like doing less crime? Is that what it is? Well, turns out that is actually the case. All available empirical data on the matter shows undocumented immigrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are. I'll give you another fact. If you were to listen to the Republicans constantly talk about, sorry, my dog is actually sitting. Hey, Kaya, sit. Baby, sit.
That's a good dog. We haven't heard that dog once yet. What kind of dog are we talking about here?
Good dog.
Yeah.
Good dog.
I'll show you.
I'll
show you her in a. Yeah, I'll show you her in a second. So the one thing that what was I talking about?
You were saying you were going to give us one good
Dogs,
fact.
think,
you have one good fact that we need.
Mentioned Hitler a lot too.
Oh, I did mention Hitler a lot because unfortunately that's where we're going right now, and we're bouldering towards that. So, like I said, Democrats should constantly be talking about the fact that there is no readily available empirical data to suggest that immigrants are doing more crime. As a matter of fact, the only available empirical data shows the exact opposite of that reality. So it's a pure Republican hysteria, Republican panic, and it's really racist panic. One other thing I will tell you is this. Donald Trump talks about immigrants are responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths every year. That's what he says. He says that at his rallies. He says that as the RNC. I've never heard from a Democrat be like, yo, hold on. What are we talking about here? That seems like a big old deal. I've never heard a Democrat go, that seems insane to say. Let's take a look at the data. Well, I did look at the data. Customs and Border Patrol data shows. Do you want to know how many murders undocumented migrants committed this past fiscal year?
Yes, I would, because I did see what John Oliver did on what you're saying there, that migrant crime is a total fiction. There is nothing to support it. It's just a made-up phrase.
Yeah, it's completely made up. You want to know? I'll tell you what it is. I looked at the data. 23. So that means, and we've definitely heard 23 horrific, gruesome things that an undocumented citizen has done in this country. So that means that every single instance of a murder committed by an undocumented migrant was heavily publicized in this country in an effort to make you think like they're doing crimes every day. This doesn't mean that like undocumented migrants are responsible for zero crimes. Of course not. They're human beings. Some human beings are going to do good things. Some human beings are going to do bad things. We're all a victim of our own circumstance. But you have to look at like, if this is how to deal with crime, you have to look at the entire group of people and see if they're responsible for an overwhelming share of the crime. And it turns out they're responsible for less crime. It's actually insane that we have this conversation. Donald Trump tries to link the undocumented, the undocumented murder rate. He tries to claim that it's 100,000 because he tries to claim that it's fentanyl, right? It's actually the fentanyl that they're bringing over the border. Another total fabrication, completely made up. 90% of drugs that are coming across the border are apprehended. This is the Department of Homeland Security's own data. This is not, woke Marxist Hasan making this up. This is the Department of Homeland Security, okay? So according to the DHS data, and this was the same under Donald Trump, it's the same under Joe Biden, it'll be the same under Kamala Harris or whoever becomes president. The Department of Homeland Security's own data shows 90% of the drugs apprehended at the border are not actually like border crossers, right? It's not a law-abiding abuela from Guatemala who walked all the way to America or tried to cross the Rio Grande River, like carrying bags of fentanyl over the border. That would be insane. That's an unsustainable business. That's an unsustainable operation. You know who's actually trafficking the drugs? White American citizens that are crossing over the border after getting their cars chopped up by the cartel. Of course, 90% of the drugs are apprehended at regular points of entry, according to the Department of Homeland Security's data, and more than 90% of those apprehended are American citizens because they're the ones who are less likely to get stopped.
Like we're the Millers.
That's
This
it.
this guy is full of. He doesn't know at all of the fentanyl carrying abuelas we have in Miami. And you look
Tell
like
that to my grandma Juana.
You look like Miami. You were briefly.
I lived there.
You were briefly in Miami.
I think he's there now. I've been to that park. I know that park.
It looks a little like South Beach, but it is not that
I think
park.
It's Coral Springs.
It's not the park in South Beach. We've got a couple of questions on the way out. We've got a couple of questions. We need to see the dog, and we need to know what kind of basketball drills you were doing.
Yep.
I follow a bunch of TikTokers. This is my dog. First of all,
Nice.
here she is. This is Kaya.
That's a good girl.
She's a very good girl. She's the best girl. She's a little baby still. She is only around 18 months. But she's very well trained. She's a big dog. She's a mutt. She's a mix between Chow Chow Tibetan Mastiff and a Saint Bernard. That's number one. Number two, what kind of drills do I do?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's been a while. I haven't played organized basketball at all in many years, since high school. As a matter of fact, that's multiple decades at this point almost. So I just look at TikTok, whatever pops up on my TikTok feed. I see there's those guys good drills. I post good drills. I forget what that dude's name is, but they'll always have some drills on there, and then I try to do some of that stuff so that I could be a little bit more explosive in my old age. Because unfortunately, I'm a little too slow. I'm 6'4", I'm 230 pounds.
6'4".
And yeah, I'm entirely too slow. This is like, what is that? That's like a shooting guard status in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Steve Kerr was 6'5". He's going to post you up. Steve Kerr would have posted you up at 6'5".
Can you dunk?
That's what I'm saying. I used to be able to. My knees are pretty bad.
Right.
Come on, give it a try. Go.
That's
Go.
why he's
Give it a
getting the
try.
insults.
Let's give it a try.
I wear knee braces. I can't.
Maybe
I can't
today's
dunk
the
right
day,
now.
though.
Yeah,
We'll
you never know.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
Good talking to you. I will tell the people. You can follow his Twitch channel at Hasan A B as in boy I. Thank you. Good catching up with you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one, guys.
All right, man.
Thank you, sir.